days. And so that's what we're picking over here. Okay? We use a settlement price for the closest to delivery contract that is actively traded. So in other words, as a contract, as a futures contract gets close to expiration, funny things start happening, liquidity drops off, and so on and so forth. So we use the moment when the open interest switches from one contract to the next nearby contract to actually define what our nearby contract is. So a contract is not actively traded. It's not something where, by definition, price discovery is taking place. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier, the sample period runs from January 2000 with the first observation in early March of 2000 through December of 2000. This is not December of 2000. Oops, sorry. This is, of course, not, that's a typo. That's not 2000, that's 2010 over here. Apologies for that. So the control variables that we have, now you might say, well, some of those pronouncements might be backed by production cuts or production increases. And so therefore, how about the direction of the production announcements? Well, it turns out that only 13 of the 78 events had production announcements within 5 days, either before or after, of the fair price pronouncement. So we're going to look at 2 subsamples, but of course, the sample size is so small, we're not going to get much power over there. But I can tell you that it doesn't look, just on the face of it, that the test should yield anything, and indeed they don't. Okay. Finally, we also did some robustness checks looking at what analysts were expecting in terms of OPEC behavior. And again, everything comes fine and lovey-dovey, so that is, everything is good. All right. So do OPEC officials, or OPEC-linked officials, I should say over here, when they make a pronouncement about what the fair price of oil is, agree or disagree with the current market price. So we put in green when they're agreeing with it, in red when they're disagreeing, and when we can't tell from the news story. So we had a couple of RAs go through every single of the news stories to make sure that this was indeed the case. So you get this pattern over here. And what do we get from this graph? Well, there are lots of greens over here. So there is definitely some pattern, slight change over here, but you have some greens along the line. Otherwise, it looks as though OPEC seems to be disagreeing with the price of oil, or not quite saying anything. But if you're saying the price of oil is over here, and the price has already been higher before and continues being higher afterwards, it looks suspiciously like you're disagreeing with it. Okay? And in fact, what we're finding when we're looking formally at what we're doing, the official who's making a statement agrees with the market price 17 times in the sample, but as I say, that's mostly concentrated in a June 2009 through December 2010 period. They explicitly disagree with the market prices 25 times out of our 78 sample period, and we don't know 36 times. Now, the interesting bit is that before summer 2008, the market price is typically viewed as too high. After 2008, it's typically viewed as too low. Okay? So now the colors remain the same, because I can't invent new colors in the graph over here. But here it is not agree or disagree or don't know. It's Saudi Arabia. Then what is sometimes referred to as OPEC hawks, so basically Venezuela, Libya, Algeria, and Iran, with Nigeria, but there is only one announcement we have over here, and then others of the OPEC consensus. Okay, so I picked green for Saudi Arabia for obvious reasons, and you can see over here that the Saudi pronouncements run all the way through about mid to fall 2004. Then there's a dearth of them, and then there are quite a few over here. If you look at the rest of the pattern, there is nothing much. Now, when you're looking at this and you're trying to see a difference between the OPEC hawks, Saudi Arabia, or anybody else, you're not finding that much of a difference between them. At least visually, it doesn't look like there's a difference. And statistical tests, again, are going to be showing the same thing, which is that, no, we can't differentiate between what's happening over here. Okay? So I've just talked about this, so I'm not going to be making any more comments. And this is basically which moves first. And just to make sure that you could really see what's going on over here, we've basically put a fair price trend. And, well, the black line really looks like it's lagging the blue line. The blue line is the market price, and that's what we're expecting. And so now I'm going to be moving over here about a formal analysis of this thing. The figure that I've just shown you strongly suggests that the fair price statements lag the market prices. The formal test that I'm now going to be going through show this formally. So if you need to run, now's the time to run. You've seen the nice pictures. Now it's just going to be a bunch of ugly tables. All right. So formal methodologies over here. So basically the first thing that we do, we run 3 methodologies. 3 of them are in the version of the paper that is on the SSRN. In the revision, we're going to be synthesizing 1 and putting it in an appendix and keeping 2. The first one is the event study. The second is an autoregressive distributed lag methodology. So I'll be looking at those 2 things over here and focusing on that. We've also done a Kalman filtering, and we're getting exactly the same thing. Okay? So our interest over here is whether there is arrival of true news in the market. Okay? And so we're going to be comparing the nearby price of all futures before and after the fair price event. So we're going to have the statement date, and we're going to say, aha, what about before, what about after? Okay? And we're going to be using 2 non-parametric tests that I'll be describing in a moment to figure out whether those things are significant or whether they are not. Okay? So basically the event is the fair price statement date, that's the event date, and the event will separate all preceding and succeeding observations to capture the normal performance and after announcement performance of the price of oil. Okay? Now, what kind of a window are we using? So this is something one can debate, right? You could say, well, the price now that is being made is really a long-term view on where the market is going to be going. Having looked at the picture, it doesn't look quite like it, but let's assume that that's the case. We're going to be dealing with this in the ADL methodology. Over here for an event study, I'm going to have a 1-day, 2-day, 3-day, 4-day, 5-day window before, and 1-day, 2-day, 3-day, 4-day, 5-day window afterwards. No matter what I'm doing, I'm getting exactly the same results. Okay? So basically, here is just to double check whether you can read very small characters on the board. So let me tell you what we're doing. Okay? So basically, we have 2 criteria that we're going to be looking at. The first one, we call it the direction criterion. And again, we haven't invented this. This is the event study methodologies taken from the literature on verbal intervention in foreign exchange and interest rate markets. Okay? So, but we're applying that for the first time, as far as we can tell, to literature about OPEC pronouncements. Okay, so the first is a direction criterion. If the fair price is above what the market price used to be, so the price used to be 20, you say that the fair price is really 25, well, does the price move up? Okay, that's a fairly simple test. And 50% of the time, in a random draw, 50% of the time it should be going up, 50% of the time it should be going down. So therefore, it's hiding behind the tree over here. But you know what the null is. Basically, there's no information content, and can we reject this? Okay? The second criterion is a little bit more involved. It's what we call a smoothing criterion. That's a leaning against the wind type of approach in foreign exchange settings. So basically, suppose that the exchange rate is moving, and in this particular case, suppose the market price of crude oil is dropping over time. Well, you might want to reverse it. That's the directional criterion that we had talked about. Or you might want to slow down the rate of drop. And so that's a more generous criterion, and so therefore the null is going to be that 75% of the time you should be right. And so that's what we're going to have over here. Okay. So that's the first methodology. The second methodology is a Kalman filter. As I said, I'm going to be skipping through that. The third methodology is basically to fit an ADL model to run an autoregressive distributed lag model to forecast basically the market price of crude oil using past market information. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all the old price information that we have, market price, and then we're going to try to forecast using this information what the future price of crude oil would be. And we're going to be trying to see whether the forecasted market price and the fair price, well, we think that they should be very close. So that's number one. Now, 2 versions that we're using. The first one is we're only using old values of the market price. The second version that we're using is we're explicitly testing for whether adding the fair price to the market price information is going to improve the quality of the forecast. The short answer, nope. Okay, so here are the results. Okay. The event study analysis, what are our results? Basically, fair price pronouncements are not successful, neither at affecting the direction of the market, nor at merely slowing down the pace of prior market price movements. So it doesn't look like this is working. In other words, we cannot reject the hypothesis that the post-pronouncement return is just purely random. Okay? Now, we get similar results no matter which way we cut the data. So we do it for the whole sample. We split the sample based on whether there was a concomitant production announcement or not. doesn't make a difference. We try different window lengths, doesn't make a difference. We look at different time periods depending on spare capacity, and I'll show you a picture in a moment why we care about this. It doesn't make a difference. Okay? I don't know how much time I have. I have 5:18. I'm guessing I have about 10 minutes. We're good. Then I'm going to go through them. So the panels that we have over here, I have 2 slides, one for 5 days, one for 2 days. I'll focus on one and then have it. But basically, when you look at the statistical significance over here, basically, there is no way on earth that, that those pronouncements have any statistically significant impact on market prices. Okay?